Hey Ken, this is Greg once again. It's Friday, January the 14th, year 2022. Back for Chapter 6 of To Kill a Mockingbird. Main thing in this chapter started out to be with, once again, Jim's and Dill's obsession with Boo Radley. I mean, they are just eat up with Boo Radley. You know, Scout doesn't really care anymore, but Jim and Dill do. And you kind of get the impression just from things that are going on, who's the mastermind behind all this stuff? To me, it appears like it is Dill. And I'll give you a little bit of evidence here in a little bit. But not saying that Jim has no interest, but Dill really seems to be the one who has most of the plans. So, like I mentioned yesterday, I think I got this in before the video cut off yesterday. The irony at the end of the story about who actually gets to see Boo Radley, and it's Scout, and she doesn't even care. Jim and Dill, or of course, like I said, they're obsessed with seeing him, and they end up never getting to see him. You know, Scout only sees him that one time. She said at the end of the book she never saw him again. So anyway, just some items of interest in this chapter. First of all, the spitting on the hinge at the gate. The gate was squeaking when they got into the back garden of the Radleys. And I brought this up with my kids because I figured they didn't have any idea what in the world that was talking about, because kids, most kids today don't spend all their summers outside playing and discovering things like when we were kids. And of course, I'm sure you've probably done this before too. You got something that's squeaky, and like a hinge or something like that, and you spit on it until it no longer squeaks, which is exactly what Dill and Scout did to get the gate not to squeak anymore. None of my kids knew what that was talking about, which is kind of about what I figured. I figured there might be one or two, but there actually were none. The second thing is the chickens, and I had kids that figured that out, that Jim had stepped in chicken manure, and he goes, "Arr!" He was upset because he got all over his shoes. But and I had kids that figured that one out. That one wasn't too difficult to figure out. I guess I had never considered the fact that the Radleys had chickens in their backyards. We know they have a garden because Jim told them to stay away from the collards because they make too much noise if you rustle up against them. I guess I just never thought about, they're living in a town having chickens. Now, I have known people before. I actually have a neighbor in a subdivision behind our row of houses that kept chickens, and a couple dogs came in and slaughtered them all. But, I mean, this is right in the town limits, and he raises chickens. My daughter and her husband are getting ready to build a house whenever it becomes reasonable prices for the wood and stuff. But they're going to live on a bunch of acres of land, and they want to have chickens and other things too, cows and pigs and stuff like that. But chickens is one of the things they want to have. And birds can be kind of filthy animals. I live next to a town that has a real nice lake to it, and I used to take my son there, my disabled son. I used to take him there. He loves water. He loves ponds. He loves frogs. That's usually what he hunts for. And I finally quit going there because they had this huge flock of geese that live there, and they land there every day, and it's just such a mess around there. It's just you can't even walk without stepping in the goose poop. The next thing was the shadow that came on the on the porch when Jim was stuck up there, and I'm sure you've seen the movie. It's kind of a dramatic part, more so in the movie than it is in the book. In the movie, Dill covers his face as well. I think Scout continues looking. But I asked the kids, I didn't tell them who it was, I asked the kids afterwards who they thought it might be. The first answer I got was, well, it was probably Atticus. He figured they were sneaking out, so he went down there to catch them. And then somebody else said it was Boo Radley. Of course, that's who it was. Boo Radley. I'm surprised none of them said it might have been Nathan Radley, Boo's brother. I couldn't think of who else could have possibly considered it. You know, it was. But that was their only two choices, and class was kind of divided. About half of them thought it was Atticus, the other half thought it might have been Boo Radley. The last thing was Jim's pants caught under the fence, and again, I feel kind of, in a way, kind of sad for kids today. I mean, again, when you and I were kids, you know, we played outside, at least I did, and all my neighbors did, as much as possible, climbed over fences, under fences, around fences, you know, and just anything to do with outdoors, you know, we did. And I don't think my kids kind of understood the concept of pulling up the fence and crawling underneath it. They'll see it in the movie, and I'm sure they'll figure it out. Not too difficult figuring that out. All right, they got back after Nathan Radley fired his shotgun and chased off, you know, the intruder, the visitor. You know, the people of the town were all gathered around. Well, the people in the neighborhood were all gathered around the Radley place. They were talking, discussing what was going on, and Jim showed up without any pants. And of course, Atticus noticed it right off, and Dill came to the rescue. You know, he told him the story. You know, we were playing strip poker, of all things, playing strip poker. And of course, that raised everybody's eyebrows, including Atticus's. And he made a statement there that I had to explain once again to my students. He said, "Were you playing with cards?" You know, he asked me, "Were you playing with cards?" And I had to explain to them that many groups of people, whether they're religious or not, they, especially back then, but even when I was growing up, I had people that I went to school with that were not allowed to play cards at all, because mainly because of the parents' religious beliefs. And you know, and I told the kids, I said, well, you know, cards were, you know, for a long time had to do with, you know, magic and, you know, fortune telling and witchcraft and stuff like that. But I said, probably even more important at that time, they didn't want their kids to get involved in gambling, because gambling was huge, you know, back in the Great Depression. And it was just considered a no-no. Even my mother-in-law would not allow certain things on Sundays to happen at her house. She couldn't play cards at her house. She wouldn't sew. But I had a few friends growing up with, and we'd go to the gymnasium in the morning, wait for the bell to ring. And during my senior year, junior and senior years, you know, we had euchre games every morning in the gym. Not everybody did, but I participated. But I had friends that were not allowed to play cards, and you know, they told me why, and it was fine with me. I accepted that, you know, but it was because of their parents' you know, beliefs that you couldn't play cards. And I understand that. I'm not making fun of that at all. I get it. People have convictions. But Dill's quick thinking to kind of avoid the situation, and you know, it kind of lightened the thing there. Who was it? Stephanie? Was it Miss Stephanie or Miss Maudie made the statement while the kids were there? This is after, oh here, I found it right here. It was Miss Stephanie. She made the statement, said, telling the kids, said, Nathan, Mr. Radley, shot in the air, scared him pale though, says if anybody sees a white nigger around, that's the one. Says he's got the other barrel waiting for the next sound he hears in that patch, and next time he won't aim high and be a dog, nigger, or Jim Finch. All right, at this point, I'm thinking the kids probably should have gotten an idea that those people that were around there, my best guess is they knew what was going on, especially when Jim showed up without his pants. And so I asked the kids, I said, well, if the rest of the group the adults knew what was going on there. Why didn't they say anything? And they gave me a lame answer. I don't even remember what it was at this moment, but they gave me an answer that wasn't acceptable. And I said, well, it could be just out of respect for Atticus, let him take care of whatever. And he was kind of taking care of Dill as well, for Miss Stephanie. And I'm not sure they bought my theory there, that the rest of the people knew. However, I kept on, I brought up another part in this chapter. After the three kids leave and Jim was told to go get his pants back, from Dill, and they were supposed to square things out, that Scout said she heard Atticus talking when they got out of the way. And this is what Atticus, we stopped and we heard Atticus's voice. And this is what Atticus said. Not serious. They all go through it, Miss Rachel. All right. He has to be talking about one of two things. He has to be talking about them either gambling, because they said they were playing with matches and not cards. Either that, or he has to be talking to her about, they all understood that it was those kids who were there, and whatever they need to do to confess up or whatever, they need to take care of it. But the statement that Stephanie made, and she emphasized Jim Finch. So I'm kind of thinking, I think the evidence kind of points in the direction that maybe the rest of the adults really knew who it was that was back there. So anyway, what they knew. And then the last thing was Jim sneaking out to go retrieve his pants in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I wanted them to see what kind of feelings Jim has for his dad, Atticus. He respects his dad. He told Scout, he said, Atticus has never whipped me, never spanked me. And he said, that's the way it's going to be. I don't think that's the full extent of it, though. I think, at least in some level, whether it's with Jim, whether it's subconscious or not, I think he doesn't want to disappoint Atticus as well. And I think if Nathan Radley comes out to the fence in the morning and he finds those pants and they know that it wasn't a black man who was back there, that it was one of those kids, I think maybe Jim thinks that would be an embarrassment to my dad, to Atticus, and that's something he just doesn't want. And again, it's a different time that they're living in. A lot of kids that I encounter today, they wouldn't care if it embarrassed their parents or not, but that's just difference of times. It's sad from my perspective, but again, it's just different. I think this part got cut off yesterday, so I'm going to say it again. When we encounter the N-word, I don't use the N-word in class like I just read it here. I have one black girl in class. She's a sweetheart. Her name's Cece. And I asked her, because for her not to be offended, I asked her when we encounter that word, what word she would like to use. Then I gave her an example from a class I had 6 years ago. I had like 6 or 7 black kids in there. And they came up on their own. I didn't even have to ask them. I didn't even approach it. It was before we got to discussing, because they had outside of class assignments, reading assignments. They came up with using the word ninja all the time. And so when I said that, Cece said, yeah, that's fine with me. So when we encounter the word in class, it's always ninja that we bring up. Unbelievably, there have been a few school systems across the United States that have outlawed, that banned this book from being read. I don't get it. It's still the most read book in American education, middle school, high school education. And for a long time, Mark Twain was banned as well, because he just used the terminology that was common, back in the 1830s, 40s, 50s when he was growing up. And a lot of libraries refused to, in the early 1900s, refused to carry his book because it had, the racial slurs in it, even though, well, the N-word, we'll just put it that way. And so anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, what we refer the N-word as in this class. Of course, it still means the same. They just just don't want to give the opportunity for anybody to be offended by that. So anyway, we have a long weekend. We're off for Dr. Martin Luther King birthday, so I won't be back to you until Tuesday. I hope you have a good week, and I hope tomorrow is a better day than today was for you, and every day be a better day. See you, Ken.